So friends, I hope you're all doing well and are safe at home. And it's really a pleasant morning in Bangalore. And on behalf of the CEO Lounge team, I would like to welcome you all to the CEO ICONfluence Digital Roundtable series. You know, the one thing that I've learned over the decades is that there's nothing known as individual growth. The joy and pleasure of development can only be enjoyed when it happens at a collective level and at a pace that everyone can catch up to. And with strong winds of change blowing our way, we feel it's an ideal time for thought leaders to get together as a collective and crack solutions for social and economic growth, which is one of the key reasons for putting together these webinars. And over the next few weeks, this digital roundtable series will have senior corporate leaders from across industries deliberating on various subjects such as upskilling, future-proofing organizations, way forward for startups, human resource management, and overall growth story of our economy. And we strongly believe in the power of collective thinking and collaborative working. And what better than some of the sharpest corporate minds to lead the way. And finally, today we have, let me welcome, in fact, Abhishek, Daya, Anand, Krishnan, Dayanand, and Om. And our panelists today are not only senior corporate leaders, but are extremely passionate individuals. Abhishek is a passionate cricketer. Anand has a master chef inside him. Daya loves to be called himself a farmer. Krishnan has his own music band. Dayanand only serves the wines made by him. Om's life is an inspirational story in himself. So there's a purpose of life for everyone. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. And Dayanand, I hand this over to you for an engaging conversation.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you. It's delightful. I'm delighted to be here this morning. Before we start, we must acknowledge all the efforts being made by health workers, doctors, people who keep the utilities going across the world as we come to this brave new world. The world has changed. The business world has changed. And today we're going to discuss about resetting KRAs, looking at workplaces beyond COVID-19. We have a galaxy of speakers who are going to speak. I have requested each of them to speak for not more than 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes. Once they're done, hopefully in 25 minutes, we will have some time for Q&As. So please do put your questions and we'll take them at the end. We'll kick off with Anand Ramamoorthy. Anand is MD of Micron India. I've been in the IT industry for a long time. So I thought, let me be partial and allow Anand to be the opening batsman. So over to you, Anand, for your 5 minutes maximum discussion. I have told each of these panelists to speak on the topic. Plus, I have given them specific focus areas. To Anand, I told him specifically to focus on managing remote workplace environment. Over to you, Anand. Your 5 minutes start now.
Thank you, Dayanand. Very good morning to you and good morning to all of you. Deepak, thank you for putting this together and doing it a very, as you always do, a CEO lounge way of doing things. So wonderful. Good to see a strong participation this morning. It was a wonderful morning here in Bangalore and doesn't feel like a Saturday. So one of the first after effects of COVID is the weekdays and weekends have kind of collapsed. The whole concept is kind of gone. So we've got to reevaluate what it all means for us long term. Back to Dayanand's commentary. We all of us have had time to reflect on what does all of this mean for us short, mid, and long term. I think the short-term piece is easy. We are reacting to situations. Employees need passes, something goes wrong. Operationally, you're kind of always reacting. I believe the focus today is more on mid and long. And when I try to look at this problem statement, I look at the universe of touch points that we have in a typical enterprise. So we obviously have employees at the core of it. So I'm going to talk about what it means for employees to work remotely, to Dayanand's comment. But just touching on some other pillars that we have our customers that we serve on a daily basis. So what does COVID mean for the customer space? We have vendors and partners, critical vendors and partners, small and big. So there is an implication for them. Then we have enhanced interaction with government agencies. That's the interesting pillar. And the last but not least, the communities that we serve and we live in. I'll obviously focus more on the employee part, but I want to quickly touch on the remaining 4 pillars too. So we at Micron moved work from home a little early in the game, and it was a learning that employees appreciate when you're able to kind of move the trigger a little earlier than prescribed or mandated by the government. So we moved work from home probably a week earlier than the mandate, and it just gives you more headroom and time to plan and execute better. And at the India Center, we obviously have a business. We do a lot of R&D and innovation, and then we also have what I call day-to-day engineering. So when I look at the data is like 2 to 3 weeks old, so I don't want to over pivot to what we already know or have. But we're seeing that when it comes to productivity-related tasks, the impact is quite minimal. But if you are kind of contributing in a very contained, solo way, you continue to do that as long as you have the right IT tools at home. If you have the right bandwidth at home, you have the IT infrastructure. So we don't see an impact on the productivity-related tasks so much. Innovation is, as we all will agree, is more of a cultural thing. You own of a culture and organization.
Anand, sorry, I'm interpreting you, but can't see you on the video. So a lot of people actually.
Okay. Not sure why. Okay, let's see.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
That's a shame. I had dressed myself up and was trying to look sharp this morning.
Only Ninad right now on the screen.
You can't see me?
It would automatically trigger a speaker's voice, right?
No, we can see everybody except Anand.
Okay, Deepak, I'm not sure. I think I've done everything I could. So should I just continue or should we?
No,
okay.
Please.
Apologies. And so let me try one more time. I think I said play video. Okay. Sorry, I'll continue, Deepak, in the interest of time. So so I think innovation is a cultural thing. So we've seen that that kind of continues by default for most part. The part of remote workplace that is getting impacted is what I call active collaboration and debug. In any engineering project or a delivery program, that is what is called a root causing, failure analysis, debug activity, which is very physical in nature historically, because these are, you get into a room, you're whiteboarding, you're trying to solve a problem. There is no specific, is the unknown, right? And how do you capture all of that? So that's the part of remote workplace that is beginning to show some early impact. So productivity stays good for task-oriented objects and projects. Innovation continues because it's a culturally driven thing. But I think some of the aspects of root causing is beginning to show some impact, and we're going to see how we can plausibly use the collaboration tools much more actively and effectively for taking care of that issue. Quickly touching in the remaining few minutes I have, I talked about, that's the employee part. So we're keeping them, high degree of communication, keeping them motivated. People are working long hours. I think we in India particularly, I have to tell my stakeholders, don't assume a certain level of broadband and bandwidth, because that is not always equally available. So you have to kind of have a custom approach to managing productivity milestones and projects. But so far, I think safe to say that we don't see any large long-term fatigue or repair that is needed. On the customer side, what I worry most about very quickly in the remote workplace is we've always had a very high-touch approach to customer relationship and management. But the recent Geo Facebook deal probably illustrates that you can go and strike a $6 billion deal without having to probably meet people in person. So I believe that paradigm is also getting challenged and changing. But I worry about it because many of our business is often based on relationships and touch and trust. All of them seem to be inspired, and they tend to grow with more and more of interactions. Again, that's the piece I worry in the remote workplace model, that maybe it may take a little more effort, and we may have to change some of our styles to ensure those trust factors and relationships continue to grow and thrive. The vendors and partners, we are actually approaching that whole concept with empathy and being practical. That is focus on cost reduction, trying to make sure we have enough cash at the bank. Micron is a relatively large company, but it would be foolish not to be blinded by the fact this could go on for a very, very long time. So we're looking at the vendor ecosystem and the partner ecosystem with empathy, but also not being silly or foolish about not right sizing or understanding that this cannot go on at the same levels that we have today. Last but not the least, I think the big discovery for me has been in the community part of it. We all do CSR all the time, and very often, I'll be honest enough to say it's like something we do because sometimes we're asked to do, and we do it in bits and pieces. But I think all of us in the new remote model have looked at community building and CSR with a whole new pair of eyes. Particularly for me, I believe what we are obligated to or what we need to do for our communities where we operate has become superbly critical. And if there is one takeaway for me, one good takeaway outside of work and productivity and all those markers, is to look at community building for large enterprises and medium enterprises with a new pair of eyes and a new set of focus.
Thank you. Thank you, Anand. That was very comprehensive in the 5 minutes. I think you covered every aspect of remote working. It's interesting you spoke about challenges connected to collaboration and root causing and whiteboarding, etc. I'm sure over time we can overcome them. And finally, I heard you saying that if Geo deal can happen remotely, why can't Anand do anything? So he can manage customers as well. So thank you, Anand. I'll come back to you with questions later on. I'm sure our participants, we have close to 500 participants. We'll have some questions later. Dayanand Allapur, he's a global head of human resources, Cognizant digital operations. As you see from the video, he's on the edge of his home garden. So I hope he doesn't get distracted with his plants in the background. Daya will speak for 5 minutes, again, broadly covering the same topic, but I have requested him to focus a little bit more on managing employee productivity with a focus on social and emotional issues. Over to you, Daya, for your 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Anand, and thank you, Ninad. And hello, everybody. Good to see you here or good on this panel and all the participants as well. Thanks for sparing your time on a Saturday to listen to all of us. I know this is a vexing issue for pretty much everybody, whether it is a vegetable vendor on the street or a corporate multi-billion-dollar company. Everybody is facing the same issue. We're all quarantined. We talked about BCP plans all our lives. Everybody did some BCP plan or the other, whether it's a Chennai floods or some earthquake or some riots. But whoever imagined that this is the kind of BCP that the whole world has to go through? Most of the humanity is now indoors, stuck. Some are protesting, some are falling sick, some are dying. And companies at the same time are struggling to figure out how to stay alive, stay in business, and find alternate ways of doing it. This entire virus situation has shown us what is the priority for us, for our personal well-being, our health, at the same time, what matters most. And suddenly the clients are looking at, hey, so many people are working from home across so many countries. In India, nobody ever thought that working from home would really succeed. You have seen the reports in the newspaper, how many CEOs of big companies have said productivity has actually gone up. We thought 8 or 10 hours that we may work at home. It's becoming maybe sometimes 13 or 14 hours now. It is stretching. People are on calls for endless hours, continuous videos, telephones, and fatigue. This all in a very constrained environment while being at home. I think it's extremely important for us to get a right perspective on this entire thing. What's happening? What's happening to our leaders? What's happening to our colleagues, associates? Where do they live? How do they work? The families were used to seeing their spouses, parents, or sons going to work. Today, suddenly they're spending endless hours on the phone, sitting in front of the video and talking to people. They don't have privacy. Neither do they have a good ergonomics, a good seating or chairs. We are all notorious for unregulated power cuts. We have very varying temperatures across India. Some parts it is extremely cold, some it is very hot and humid. People not all can afford ACs. They sit in rooms where it's crowded space. They're on calls constantly telling people move away. And I can see this happening on a daily basis. I mean, I should tell you a couple of instances. One of our colleagues who had a pet dog, every now and then it would pop up and come. It was finding it kind of embarrassing for the person to, go through this. And every now and then she was hushing and said, hey, it's okay. I mean, now, if you're at work, this won't happen. Now, because you're at home, you have invaded the privacy of maybe your pet or your colleagues or your parents or your children. Suddenly an elderly person coming in and walking in saying, how long are you on the phone? Sometimes you get up and come. And again, another moment. I think people need to understand that this whole workplace and family space is getting completely blurred now. People are finding it very difficult to figure out where to draw the line. And at the same time, we have this workplace. What is that workplace? How do we define? And our workforce, who is our workforce? And what kind of work can we do from home? What cannot be done from home? What do we expect from people while they are on these calls? Can we define certain, do's and don'ts, not for just the employees or associates, even for the leaders? This is the true moment where our expectations and behaviors of leadership has to be incongruent with this new reality. If we are not congruent with what's happening around, then we will end up creating a new tension, new stress among our colleagues. People will find it very difficult to know how to cope with this new situation. It's that we have to, as a company and as employers, have to start realizing we are invading into the family space. Now, how do we enable and how do we ensure that family members recognize this new reality as well? Do they realize what this means, what that workplace is? Where people are sitting at home on speaker phones or videos, and what's our tone when we are conversing with people? Are we respectful? Are we mindful? Are we listening to them carefully? Are we appreciating the difficulties and challenges that they're having? If we do not, we are creating a kind of a situation where people will find it difficult to cope with this new reality. There are also a few things that we need to look at, from the perspective of facilities and things that we can provide. A lot of events we do in the offices, right? We do birthday parties, celebrations, we do promotion celebrations. Many events are done in the organizations. How do we ensure that the same thing gets replicated at home now? Simple things, but can we do it? Can we celebrate? Can we now that work has gone home, can we loan the family members and say, hey, look, here is today this promotion. Here is today this birthday. Engage the family in doing that, maybe a surprise party. Let the family feel, okay, you're at home. This is how your family cares. This is how they do. This is how they, appreciate you. Recognize them, reward them, maybe send a bunch of flowers home, maybe send a cake for some important events. I think that blurred space of family versus work, how we can make it almost seamless without intruding on privacy, but at the same time repeating some of the best practices we did at work. I think that will be very important. Maybe involving families, doing these yoga sessions, health sessions, meditation. We may think, people are at home now, they may not need a healthcare facility. Who knows, if there are two working couples sitting with no other help or no other extended family support, how can they take care of two children? Now, we don't know how long the schools will be open. 6 months? They'll be closed for another 6 months or 1 year, or homeschooling may become another norm. Then how do we do it? Do we still have to give, daycare facility for people while they're staying at home? The kids go to daycare. I mean, all kinds of scenarios are possible. Plenty is happening. There's a lot of food for thought for corporates to rethink whether to give membership to various things. Plenty is happening there. So I'll stop at that point. Sure. We need to be just mindful, thoughtful, ensure that we demonstrate our true leadership in this time. And over to you, Ninad.
Thank you, Dayal. Thank you for summarizing, saying we need to be mindful and thoughtful. I think that's great. It's a great message for all the participants. So next panelist is Abhishek Ganguly. He is the MD of Puma India. He's going to again speak for 4-5 minutes on the general topic, but I specifically asked him to focus a little bit more on managing employee productivity in a work from home environment. So over to you, Abhishek, for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Ninad. I think it's really gratifying to see more than 500 people listening to us on a Saturday morning, especially listening to 6 of us predicting the future when future is actually uncertain. And I don't think it's always very prudent to predict the future like we saw. Well, I think most importantly, that the world has changed, and I think the world will be different post-COVID than ever before, and the impact is going to be long-term. We are in a product business where there is not just an office environment, but we run about 370 exclusive stores. So there is retail where consumers come in. On an average, about 1,000 consumers walk into our stores, used to walk into our stores every day. Health and safety, I think, will remain very critical in workplaces going forward. And we all have to be very, very mindful of that. Don't forget that we also have to run warehouses where there are millions of products and there are a lot of people through the shifts working through. And their health and safety is going to be extremely critical. Business clearly is a challenge and will be a challenge. It is very natural that employees are bound to feel insecure. Compassion and empathy will be critical for factors at workplaces. I personally feel that compassionate leadership will be the go-to word that will emerge in the new world, in business. Times are uncertain, like we all know. And workplaces need to rehaul their thinking. It is not about just predicting how businesses would be, how the business would be, 12 months ahead. Businesses have to adapt. And hence, flexibility and nimbleness will be extremely critical for businesses. We all have to track what are the new trends. In the consumer space, new trends of consumer behavior are going to adapt. We have to have new discoveries, and we need to adapt our entire strategy and the organization to that change. I also think that as the world is changing, communication and collaboration will be more important than ever. Communication, not just with one's employees, but with partners, with consumers. Consumers, when they walk in to a retail environment, they need to feel safe. Also collaborating with vendors, suppliers across the entire value chain will be critical. And I think in the digital world, communication and collaboration will find new avatars of doing that. Ninad asked me that what do I think about employee productivity? How do you manage that in a very work from home environment? I think we are all finding new ways. We're discovering new ways of working. But what hasn't changed in terms of managing employee productivity, and I think that comes to the fore even more today, is having clarity of goals and objectives and having the ownership clearly laid out in the entire organization. I think each employee should know how is he or she contributing, what is the cog, which cog in the machine is that person. And as long as that clarity exists, I think automatically the ownership will lie with the employees, and they will rise to the occasion and they will take the onus. And of course, one needs to have regular, structured tracking of progress. So I think it's very important that everyone knows what role they are playing. Trust will be a key factor going forward, and I think micromanagement is out. It is about having trust in the employees, giving them the clarity of what role they are playing, and not micromanaging them. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Great. You spoke about compassionate leadership. You spoke about clarity of goals and objectives. I liked your last statement. Trust is important. Micromanagement is out. Great. I think some great lessons for the 500 plus participants who are here. We will move on to Krishnan Chatterjee, who's the Chief Customer Officer, Head of Marketing of SAP India. People, all companies in India look forward to what SAP is doing. And he's going to speak for 5 minutes on the topic, but I have requested him to focus a little bit more on speaking about virtual. The new meaning of virtual is, the new meaning of face-to-face is virtual, and how to make it productive. So over to you, Krishnan.
Thanks, Ninad. So, Ninad, very quickly, let me just take a slight difference with the point you made. This word called virtual is an interesting word, and it's being used by a lot of us right now. But potentially that's not going to help us a lot, and I'll explain that. I'll come to where SAP is seeing the market going and what's going on and how that impacts our workplaces. But I wanted to start by something I'm beginning to believe very strongly, which is I am in agreement with everything every speaker has said about what's happening to us right now from a lockdown circumstance. I think what we need to think about, as the topic is what happens beyond this, as we enter into the new normal, and how does that impact us? My personal opinion right now is that, as you look at employees, you have to understand that we have the largest burning platform that any of us have ever seen in our lifetimes. And for certain leaders, that burning platform will need to be used. Many will not. And many will just extend business as usual into something called virtual. So marketeers will take physical events and virtually try and do them. It's not going to work because the burning platform means there is going to be a significant discontinuity. And if we don't think about that discontinuity and redesign and re-engineer for that, those businesses are going to be in a lot of trouble. So let me point to three things we are seeing shaping that discontinuity. And as SAP, obviously, perhaps 70% of India's corporate tax is paid by our clients. So I speak to most of them, and I am hearing some very interesting things come through.
Sure.
The first interesting thing is the nature of demand. Largely, clients have understood this, plus, we are seeing experiences out of China. Other than some very few product categories, largely demand is going to decline. That I think is understood. Consequently, one of the single largest business responses to that is going to be significantly expanding addressable market. So in our workplace, as employees and managers and leaders, if we do not find ways of expanding our addressable market, our business is not going to go back to what it was, with corresponding implications on P&L, balance sheet, employee productivity, etc. Second interesting insight that is coming is, historically, in India, business owners, leaders, promoters have not thought about technology being a first port of call to solve a business problem. Typically, when you talk to a business owner or a promoter, it's easier to say, let's put a few more warehouses, let's put another fleet of trucks, let's hire more labor, than to say, let's create a technology solution. And that's where the Uber story always fascinates me, where two people came into India, and now we have 500,000 jobs being run as a consequence of what two started doing. So but the sense I'm getting now is that older generation, our chairmen, owners, promoters, are increasingly becoming amenable to technology being the first port of call to solve a business problem. One of the largest asks that I'm now getting is, how do you automate the shop floor in manufacturing? And, let's look at predictive maintenance, quality, etc. These are not conversations at that level we used to hear before. And I'm not talking about just the fact that all these business leaders now are doing Zoom calls and the things we are doing right now. So there is a certain openness now to technology. And when I marry point one and point two, there are interesting combinations that come up. Manufacturing sector in India, which last year got the 15% corporate tax ruling, now has the opportunity to start playing harder in the export market, given the way the global supply chain will obviously start realigning as China falls out of favor. So that's point two, which is this increasing friendliness with technology as a solution to business problems. The third thing I think we are seeing happening very significantly is, we saw it happening with, it all kicked off with demonetization, GST, the e-way bill, e-invoicing, all of that. The acceleration towards the formalization of the economy is going to go up dramatically, because track and trace, our assets, our products, our people, everything now needs to become traceable. Risks need to be quantifiable. And as a consequence, I think many businesses in India, which have thrived in the informal sector or even are formal, but have leveraged the informal sector in their supply chains and such like, all that mindset will also have to start changing. India will increasingly rapidly start moving towards a formal economy. I think if you just think about these three things, and there are many more, but these are three I'm immediately hearing from our customers. The implications on what will happen to us as workers is quite dramatic. So if you are not thinking in terms of, and that's where I go back to the burning platform analogy, I don't think I'll spend time going through each of these points and the implication on our work style. That should be fairly obvious.
Thank you, Krishnan. That was wonderful. Burning platform analogy is great. You spoke about three points which you're hearing: nature of demand, friendliness to technology, and acceleration of formalization of economy. These are delightful, wonderful points. I think very, very insightful. Lot to think about. We move on to Om Manchanda. He's the CEO of Dr. Lal Path Labs. He's a busy man recently, and we are really happy you took time to be with us this morning, given your schedules. I have asked Om to speak on the topic generally, but also a little bit specifically on what is a new normal for CEOs in terms of health and managing health and safety of the workers and employees. Over to you, Om, for your 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Ninad. And thanks, Deepak, for organizing this webinar and having me over here. So I'll try and summarize in 2 or 3 points. Number one is our current situation as an organization is quite different from all of you or many other organizations. We are actually in the eye of the storm. While many of us at the headquarters are locked down, but most part of my organization, which is frontline, is really operating. So we have to manage the entire frontline staff and their anxiety. They are meeting the patients, unsure whether they are COVID positive or not positive. They have to perform their duties. So it's somewhat like army headquarters, where the headquarters is locked down and soldiers are fighting the war. So that's a kind of situation. I guess that experience we can talk about someday later. But I just thought I'll put this points in 2 parts. One is, what is the role of a leader in situations like this, and a little bit of my experience that I've seen over the last 1 month. If you just map out current situation, so we were in a pre-COVID situation before January of 2020. And sometime, I think middle of Jan or end of Jan, this world started recognizing, especially outside China, there is something serious happening. And for almost 2 to 3 months, till about early March or mid-March, we were always in this situation like, okay, SARS happened many years back. It only happened in few countries. It never spread. So we were a bit alerted, but not that kind of thing that is going to come to us as well. I think the seriousness started hitting sometime mid-March onwards, and we went into a sudden lockdown situation in the last week of March. So I think most people whom I interact, I think everybody is thinking that 3rd May onwards, once the lockdown is lifted and life is going to come back to normal. So unfortunately, I think difficult moments for all of us in public life are going to start actually post the lockdown is lifted. I think that situation is even more, one needs to be more cautious about that situation, because right now, if I were to call COVID or coronavirus as enemy, it's actually imprisoned. So it's actually inside. Once it comes out, then you have a bigger challenge. Second thing is, I think the word which is used as the title of this webinar is post-COVID-19. I'm not sure there is something called post-COVID. I would rather use the word as post-lockdown lift. I'm not sure whether post-COVID is actually going to come very soon, because whatever interactions I'm having, it's actually a situation which is going to be like this, because coronavirus is here to stay. We have to deal with this till either a vaccine or some kind of treatment comes in. So we are actually going to be a post-lockdown era where one has to be very, very careful. So just let's look at 2 things this lockdown has done. One is, actually, it has hit us hard and made us realize that there is a problem we need to deal with. I think the pre-lockdown, we were still not taking it seriously. I think now the world has realized that it's a serious stuff. Second thing, it has also given a lot of time to authorities to prepare for, if God forbid, a difficult time were to come medically. So they have prepared there's a lot of preparedness that has gone both in terms of hospitals and testing, because I'm part of that, so I know that is happening in the background. So that's also somewhat a good news, that it's given a lot of time to authorities to prepare ourselves. What I see the role of a leader in this situation, clearly we've all heard this phrase, survival of the fittest. It's a survival of the fittest for our life and also for livelihood. So I think both at organization level as well as medically, it's survival of the fittest. So we have to take all the measures that we can take for ourselves, our own health, as well as for the organizations. I'm not going to get into details because that everybody can think of what are those measures one need to take. But coming back to the organization part, I think there's a lot of talk about employee morale and job cuts, salary cuts, etc. All that is actually fine. But to my mind, two things you need to focus. One, there is going to be a change in consumer behavior, the way they consume your products and services. Clearly, if I relate to my own business, people, actually I need to be aware as to people might just hesitate to come to an outlet to give blood samples because they don't know who they are coming in contact. So I need to address that concern of my consumer or patients. Similarly, my own employees, they are very anxious because they are meeting these patients. You don't know who is carrying the virus, who's not carrying the virus. 80% cases are asymptomatic. That is making life even more difficult. So you just need to look at the consumer behavior, the way they are going to consume your products and services, and accordingly design actions. And I'm sure each one of you can think through for your own business. The second important part is the financial health of the company. As a CEO, of course, some of these numbers may not be visible to the whole organization. Only few people would know. It's very, very important. You must know what is your real strength financially or weaknesses financially and what you guys are doing about it and how long you can carry on like that. I think it's important to make at least your immediate layer aware about it, and that might just help. On the personal piece, I would urge that make sure that your immune system stays strong, and that of course lack of sleep, any stress or some food habits, all that will add to the immune system. Make sure in this situation, because looks like this virus can only be right now dealt with your own body, which is your own immune system, and also social distancing norm, which everybody is talking about. The other experience that I've had is that, immediately after lockdown, there was a lot of burst of energy. Everybody wanted to take this whole thing head on, and we were working 24/7. So my sense is that a message to everybody, including my own team, I've been giving them, in crisis, everything gets delegated upward. And people think that the guy on the top has all the solutions and everything travels up to him. So at some level, just be cognizant of the fact that we have limited energy. Just don't try to be superhero in this whole thing. Just see that you are delegating and making use of everybody's time. Otherwise, everything will fall on your table and you are actually locked down in any case. So that's something which has helped. And I've also seen that new roles are emerging, new structures are emerging. Please be aware about that. Like in my case, we suddenly found that the COVID business and non-COVID business has to be handled completely differently. And so we immediately put together a COVID team, which was not interacting with non-COVID, because non-COVID business is most important. That's where our main bread and butter. So I would actually say that it's not only the responsibility of the CEO, but your immediate layer. I know everybody is talking about communicating down the line to whole organization, but make sure that your inner circle, which is around you, just check their emotional well-being, their physical well-being, because they are also stressed out. I think it's important that you take care of them and they'll in turn take care of their outer circle. Keep on communicating with your staff is very important. I think there are a lot of ways and means of people are communicating nowadays, which is very useful. Third thing that I've observed is this threat is actually a perception. So some people may perceive it in a very, very negative way. Some people may perceive it in a very positive way, saying that, okay, there's a new order which is going to emerge. Let's find out new opportunities as well. So I think you will have all sorts of people in your organization. Try and put them in groups. If people are perceiving threat as a big opportunity, so put them into a group which identifies new ideas for future. And people who are perceiving threat as in a very negative way, they want to go on the defensive, so deal with them separately. I do believe that while we communicate in difficult times, hope always helps in your tone, tonality, words that you use. Of course, you're cautioning them all the time, but hope sustains life, so make use of this world quite often, which helps. The last point that I want to make, which was given to me about employee safety and health in workplace. Post-lockdown, I believe they're going to be a very, very difficult time because there are a lot of asymptomatic carriers moving around in the system. And when offices open up, you will see people coming in and you won't know who is carrying this virus. So I think two things which are very important, that please look at layout of your office, because social distancing is very, very important in this. And the second thing is in terms of habits on hygiene, especially wearing face masks, is going to be another important area. Third is, I think employers will need to spend significant amount of time and effort in managing health of employees. So there are lots of organizations reaching out to me, manufacturing organizations or service organizations, where they are saying, how do we deal with employees who are going to come to office on, let's say, post 3rd of May? It's as per the current guidelines, you can't test everybody. So my sense is you will have to probably take help of opening medical centers within your own organization, especially where a large number of people are there. And you also have to be careful about confidentiality of medical status of an individual, because there are those issues as well. You can't publicly talk about many of these things, but you deal with all this. So in summary, I would say first, accept that new normal actually may not have yet set in also. We don't even know what that new normal is, but new normal is going to set, and please be aware what that new normal is. Please make your employees aware that your health is not only important for you or your family, but also for your colleagues, because till yesterday it was an individual matter, now it's actually a collective matter. They also should know that if you're hiding something, till yesterday it didn't matter from a regulation perspective. Today, laws are governing this because there's the Epidemics Act and Disaster Management Act. If you don't reveal your, especially COVID status, it can create a lot of issues, not only for yourself, but for the organizations and CEO. It's very important that there are regulations around this. As a CEO, we'll all have a lot of responsibilities on ourselves to make sure that all guidelines, and every district, every state is issuing guidelines virtually on a daily basis they are adhered to. So I think there is an additional responsibility on head of the organization to make sure that everything is done properly. I would actually say that identify some roles which can be done off-site, some are on-site, so that will help in thinning the attendance. And also, if you can have attendance by rotation. I would also go to the extent of saying that if you can set up some fever clinics, especially in those places where a large number of employees are coming to one workplace. And there are a lot of these guidelines which are there. Please be aware about if there is a positive COVID case in the organization, what needs to happen. Because there are a lot of guidelines that are coming related to contact tracing and isolation. Because that's where the key is to manage this post-lockdown or COVID scenario. And I think there is something on Arogya Setu, that app which is being promoted. It's important that people become member in that, because that will help us in contact tracing as well. So I don't know, I may have crossed my time a little bit, but I thought these are important points to put it across. So what do you, Rinath?
Thank you, Om. Yes, you did cross the limit, but we wanted to hear what you're saying, particularly your last part, very critical, important for all of us. And it's good you mentioned all of it. There's a question, long question, but I've summarized it. What are the new skill sets which an employee needs to learn? Staying at home model.
Yeah, thanks, Ninad. I think, there is a lot that people need to do today. If you look at, there is a surge of webinars. Many universities, academic institutions, specialized skill training bodies, they have opened up their resources to people during the COVID time to go register and do some courses, which is extremely important. All of the leading organizations have actually already gone online in this space a long time ago. So people will really need to now invest time in trying to pick up primary skill, secondary skill, and not be specialists in one area. And this is going to be extremely important on even working with clients, picking up some domain skills. If you're working in, say, for example, financial services sector, maybe a more correlative one could be the insurance. If you're working in insurance, maybe relative could be healthcare. And if you're predominantly in healthcare, maybe something in the life sciences. There is a lot that people can pick up in different areas in terms of upskilling themselves. But what is going to be critical is sitting at home while working your regular jobs, trying to have the discipline to keep aside some time and reward people for the programs that they do. I think it's extremely important to recognize that the programs that they do is going to be recognized by the firm and it's going to be rewarded. I think that will help people accelerate their own self-learning.
There's a question for Abhishek, quick one. I'm again kind of paraphrasing the questions. Just-in-time delivery and just-in-time production. Are we going to see the end of those models?
Well, I think very difficult to predict right now, but I think the entire supply chain will have to get rehauled. On the contrary, I feel that products and brands with very long supply chain time, when, for example, in our industry, you need to predict fashion and then place an order with a factory, which then would take 3-4 months to make products, is going to go down the drain because we'll have to react very quickly because consumer trends will emerge. Also, exact level of demand has to be altered. The supply has to be altered with the level of demand. So I think one needs to rehaul and making the entire supply chain very, very lean, and quick to react. I think that would be a trend going forward.
Lean and quick to react. Good one. I have a question from Ajay Kaul, Senior Director, Everstone Capital. Ajay is the pizza man of India. Can he be shown on the screen?
Hi, Ninad, and good morning to you and all the participants. They're all great friends. So, great insights on the subject. I have two quick questions. One is with regards to women. Often, the debate used to be that how can we increase the percentage of women in the total, employee base. With this work from home, do you believe a tectonic change by virtue of them being a bit more sincere, a bit more committed to family, kids to look after? Is this going to be like the catalyst eventually and finally, where the percentage of women in the workforce is going to increase significantly? What's your belief? The second question is, working from home is fine for a few days, but I believe intellectual stimulation and sometimes that heart which gets left out when you are like a jack working from morning till evening and not actually getting times to, cool off and have that cigarette or a coffee with your mates. How, and this is a question more for people like Daya who are experts in this space, how are you going to, take care of these aspects, the intellectual stimulation and the so-called emotional stimulation with your colleagues?
Yes, Daya, you want to quickly respond to this?
Sure. Brilliant, Ajay. I think it's one. If you recall, several, few years ago, a lot of companies came up with this back to work philosophy for women employees. I mean, how can we get them back into the mainstream? Now, if you're taking work back home, those who could not travel, those who could not keep aside priorities, you are absolutely right. There is going to be a big push, and I think there will be a greater participation of women employees who could, you can see walking around in a crude example here on the streets, on the pillars, walls, work from home, and earn so much from home. And a lot of people were doing a lot of stuff. This can become a very structured corporate initiative where you can actually allow people to do those programs from home and start working from home, provided we create a good infrastructure to deliver from home. I mean, this has worked very successfully in many of the Western countries. Why can't it work here now? It is situation forced. Secondly, I think there will also be, an issue in terms of the policies, how the corporates will come up with. There was another question, Ajay, I'm going to address that as well when it's put, what are some of the new HRM policies that companies may come up with? I think if you look at it, the way our comp and ben is structured today, how we reward people, how we pay for what, and how the components in the salary are structured, may undergo some change. And there could be some governmental relaxations and policies that industry bodies have to influence. Like if it's going to be a healthcare for elderly at home, if you're going to be, or if there is a reimbursement tax-free for a daycare, could it be compensation based on corporates have been talking about outcome-based pricing to the clients. Now, can this be outcome-based, productivity incentive for the people? It can be from various angles. I think important will be to make sure this will end up becoming a long-term sustainable one. Of course, people will feel confined to the homes and they may not have the same social interaction, but I'm sure our corporates are very ingenious in this. Maybe they will have once a week get together in some resort or some, offsite, some get together. So they all meet, interact, and go back again, meet, work at home. There could be some various innovative practices companies can think of.
Thank you, Ajay, for asking that question. We have next question from Hitanshu Gandhi. He's going to come on the screen. He's the Vice President of Magic Pin. Hitanshu, can you please come on screen?
Yes, sorry,
Go ahead.
So my question is very simple, and this is for Anand. Anand rightly pointed out the challenge that businesses face. It is a winter that we don't know how long it will last. Both supply and demand in the market is suddenly collapsed. But history tells us that while we need to be cognizant about our cost and vendor base, eventually humanity bounces back and the businesses that survive will grow and thrive. So my question was, how do we ensure we are hibernating and not killing off our vendors? How do we ensure we cut the fat but not the muscle?
Because cut the fat, not the muscle. Hitanshu, thank you. By the way, your DP is very nice. Next time we'll ask your son to ask a question. Yeah. Over to you, Anand.
Wonderful. Hitanshu, I think, you put it very well. A couple of quick comments here, right? One is I think all the data that we have is less than a few weeks old. So I don't want to over pivot on what we already know and kind of make some big projections, right? What one learning we have on the demand side is some demand is elastic, some is not, right? If you're someone wanting to buy a smartphone, and you may decide, hey, listen, I'm going to wait a little more time because of the uncertainty around me. And for all you know, the demand might just perish or might not come back. But if you're an enterprise buying data centers, that's obviously the demand is going to be significant, material, and growing very fast next 6 months. So I think companies that have a slightly more secular demand portfolio will benefit a lot more because, automotive is down, smartphone is down, but data center is up, PC is up a little bit. So obviously making it secular is important. If you're global, like in common sense, it's better because China is up, Italy is down, US is down, India is kind of getting there. So being global, being secular helps. I'm a fundamental believer that things will come back because end of the day, it's almost like, I call it a simple supply-demand equation. And as long as we have a value proposition and we solve a customer problem, we all will be in business. And if we keep our anchor on that very simple equation, things should go back. The only question is the tone, pace of recovery. People are talking about U-shaped and V-shaped. I think it's going to be more like a W that I keep telling my teams. So it's going to be up and down. It's going to be a little bit of a bouncing up and back, but eventually we'll settle down hopefully to pre-COVID levels.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you, Hitanshu, for asking that question. So we have Rajiv Kapoor, who is the MD of Pristine Ventures. Next, please, Rajiv. Can you put on the screen?
Yeah. Hi, Ninad.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a simple question. While we have discussed the company's viewpoint of what are they doing during this difficult time, what are the few things employees can do during this time to stay relevant?
Okay, what are the things employees can do
They are going through a difficult time. Everybody is going through a difficult time. What can they do so that they stay relevant during this time?
So, Krishnan, can you respond to this, please?
Sure, Ninad, I will try to. Thanks, Rajiv. Very thoughtful question. So if I go back to the points, I think the first thing employees have to do is they have to get out of the BAU mindset. And at SAP, one of the biggest battles we are now fighting is people are just trying to do the transactions they used to do earlier, perhaps in a virtual form or from a work from home form. And the fundamental nature of transaction and ability has to change. So I think there is a big mindset issue which has to be broken. And that's where I reference the burning platform. We have to understand the world is not going to stay the same again, because end of the day, we may come out of lockdown. I think the way Dr. Manchanda told us, the virus is still out there and life is going to change dramatically. I think the second aspect is employees need to start thinking more holistically about the business. So rather than, let's say, their silo, their product category, because if we are going to expand addressable markets, we need our people to start taking charge of market spaces rather than product portfolios, or whatever is your internal definition of the locus of control that they have. And I think the third very key thing that we need employees now to do is they have to become extremely empathetic and outside in rather than inside out. So let customer conversation, so engage as much as possible. Beautiful thing is customers also have lots of time now to do that engagement. People aren't running here and there. Time available has expanded. The more we can speak with customers, understand their perspective and leverage empathy in whatever business we were driving, things are going to change. I think these three things would be important.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Good to see you online. Aditi Jain has asked, what will happen to the sales job? Maybe Abhishek can respond to it.
I think it's a very relevant question. I think for some time, sales organizations have to rehaul themselves. And the way to use digital platforms to communicate with customers, and also look at different ways in which products are launched, product information is passed on. So I think a lot of it will go to complete digital. I think sales reps, who would then go to customers' offices with samples, I think that is going to go down for some time. The entire sales organization needs to be changed. I'll give you an example. Every season, we used to call our customers to a particular office in a showroom, show samples to them for future seasons, take orders, and then go back to factories and place the order. For spring summer 2021, we have made this completely digital. And sales teams are now doing one-on-one calls on Teams and Zoom with people, presenting the range to them, having one-on-one conversation with them. So the method of selling is changing. And I think sales organizations have to be rehauled at least for the next, 1.5 years.
Rehauled. Okay. This question I'll address to Om because he's from the healthcare industry. Sudha is asking, work-life balance is something which we always spoken about. With work from home, doesn't it disrupt this whole work-life balance?
It does. I know, in fact, one of the challenges that I am having is I don't know where to draw a line, because earlier when we used to leave office, there was a bit of a switch off button all of us had, and which suddenly we don't know where it's gone. And it's similarly, even switch on also when you get into the car in the office and you start thinking of office. Now you get up in the morning at 6 and you suddenly have lots of WhatsApp messages. You are straight into work.
So what are your tips? I think, and as a health person, you should, give.
Yeah, so maybe my situation is a little different than many of you, but obviously this challenge does exist.
We want You have to work 24 hours. You're the healthcare guy. You're the
So
guy
I
leading
keep-
from the front. You're not for you, for
Absolutely.
others.
So far, I am alive, so no worries. So I think it's definitely a challenge, but if it is sustained over a longer period of time, obviously new norm will fall in place. Families will start understanding, and you will start getting ready and start wearing clothes, because today at least I'm in shirt. Otherwise, I've been always in a t-shirt for the last 1 month. So obviously, those patterns will fall in place. Let's hope that it doesn't remain like this for many months to come, and we come back to normal way of working. But if it is work from home, I guess IT industry is already used to it. Looks like we'll have to find new ways of working and drawing those lines very clearly.
Okay, great. I'm going to start winding this down. There's a question to me. I was not supposed to be asked questions, but well, it's a brave new world. Sachi Malhotra is asking me, how will a strategy change for investing in startups? It will, little bit. It won't take a U-turn. It will probably just be a little bit slight difference. We will now look at value, not valuations, and we will look at all weather businesses. But the VC industry is up and kicking. They are looking to invest. There's no shortage. Even our firm is looking to invest in startups. So there is absolutely no problem of going it. So there have been a lot of questions addressed to you. And quickly you could summarize. People are asking, how do you have new KRAs? Will people invest in work from home is fine, but will companies invest for a person who doesn't have infra at work from home? Can you quickly respond to some of these questions? And then I'll ask the final round of questions.
Sorry, the last part I missed. Will they invest in what?
Suppose I just don't have infrastructure at home, and you value me as an employee. Right. I wish I was working for you, but I'm not. And at home, I just don't have any infrastructure. I can't afford anything. Neither can I afford data. I can't afford. So will you invest? Or will companies invest? Should they invest?
I think it's a great question. If office has moved home, how do we recreate office at home? I think that's a lot of our people, when we went through this crisis, even reaching our associates or being where they are, tracing them, finding out their infrastructure, a lot of the steering problems. Some people did not have wireless connectivity, broadband connectivity. Some did not have, UPS to support their work. So as a policy from the company perspective, when companies move away from huge infrastructure already created in office, I think a sharing model may come up in the future where the office chairs and desks and others may be given. If I've given my desktop and laptop, where do they keep and work on it? Maybe they do not have that kind of a setup. How do I share that? Or maybe I come up with certain policies for new hires in future. If I say I keep aside a certain X amount which is given for creating infrastructure at home, you stay with me for this period and that's yours. You keep it. If you leave before that, you probably return it, not the equipment, but you pay the cost. Companies may come up with different models because nobody knows where to warehouse those products which are returned. So the whole model...
Sorry to interject. You're saying that companies should do this, you're saying, and models will emerge later. So your point is, yes, companies should.
Some of the companies had these models. For example, Citibank for decades had been creating what they called it as famously Chemry accommodation. People shared it. They had all the infrastructure set up. Now, what's going to happen to all the real estate buildings which are up there if offices are going to be moving out? Maybe they'll end up, all the furniture needs to move. Maybe you may have to create certain accommodations where you take a tall building and provide a quote to people who stay there as bachelors. The basic setup that you want as a corporate, the minimum standards that the client expects from you, and then create a policy wherein they invest in buying that infrastructure and it is theirs if they work with the company for a certain period. Something like that. Okay. So a lot of those schemes, I'm sure, will start coming up.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is they're saying that yes, companies should do it. Schemes and models will emerge. I can't help but ask a personal question to each one of you, simple one question each, because participants always love to understand what's behind this man, what's behind this person. So I'm going to ask a quick personal question to each one of you, starting with Anand, because he had started. Anand, any new habit or hobby you picked up in this lockdown? Hobby you picked up? Yes?
Yeah.
Quick response.
Yeah, no. So keeping it light. I've become pretty good at cleaning vessels, and I continue to do so for a while. Yeah. So
cleaning vessels. Okay, Daya, when are you going to write your book?
Yes, I mean, I have many ideas in my mind. Book is something which has taken a back seat. I've made notes and kept, but I'm more into a lot of outdoor activities. I'm into long distance motorbiking, and I love farming and gardening. So I spend the time when I'm here, while I'm on the conference calls, I can just move my camera around to the garden to show you. If it gives you any
great. Gardening. Okay, so lovely. Abhishek?
I grow my own vegetables and fruits on my balcony at 15th floor. I grow papayas, bananas, grapes. So it's working well.
Great. So all of us can come home and eat,
Please.
Fresh vegetables.
I know you're making wines. You can take grapes from me.
Abhishek, any new workout which you recommend for people sitting at home?
I think home fitness is the order of the day. I think my good friend Mukesh Bansal and Ankit have really changed their business model around CureFit very quickly. I think Cult's doing a great job on home fitness. I'm personally using it. It's wonderful. Home fitness is there to stay. Unfortunately for us, that it's difficult to stay out. But what I'm really missing is live sports action. And it's a big challenge not to have anything live on TV on sports.
Okay, great. Krishnan, how many old school and college friends have you reconnected in the last 30 days?
It's strange that you asked that. None whatsoever. But I must say, as a musician, I've started picking up songs I used to listen to back in my college days, the latest being Yesterday.
Okay, great. And Om, have you stopped anything which you were doing earlier? Any bad thing, good thing? Have you stopped anything?
Maybe I'll just say that, my pet dog is loving this lockdown because that little girl never had that much of time from me. Now she's always with me. So she's wondering what has happened. On the other side, of course, I also need a break. So I am loving Indian food cooking. So I'm just enjoying that.
Great.
And I'm mostly on the calls all the time. I'm a bit of walking also within the house, within the complex. So a number of steps have gone up per day compared to what it used to be earlier.
Great. So you should look up Sanjeev Kapoor's channel. So I'm going to ask each one of you to give one Twitter response as a message, a positive message. Let's end on a positive note. What is a positive message you want to give to the participants in this time? Let's start again. Let's start with Om. Let's go backwards. Any one-line message?
I think disruptions throw up great opportunities. Keep your eyes and ears open. Some new opportunities will emerge for all of us.
Keep your ears and eyes open. Disruption throw up opportunities. Krishnan, any one-line message in these times?
If you're not already, start enjoying life. It's the only one we have.
Lovely. Enjoy life if you've not started enjoying already. Abhishek, any one-line message?
We need to have positive energies around us. Humankind will find its way.
Great stuff. Positive energy, humankind will find its way. Daya, a quick one-liner. We can't hear you. Daya, you need to unmute.
He's on mute.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I was on mute. No, I was saying pursue your passion. You never know, that can become your livelihood.
Pursue your passion. It could become your livelihood. And lastly, Anand, any quick messages? One-liner?
Yeah, Ninad, I would say this too shall pass, right? So
this too shall pass. Great. Thank you, the panelists. We had a wonderful session. We covered a lot of ground, starting with Anand talking about, challenges on the remote working place. They are speaking about priority for health. Abhishek speaking about compassionate leadership. Krishnan speaking about burning platform. And Om talking generally about health. So a great panelists discussions we had. Thank you for joining. Thank you for inviting us. Is Deepak going to come and just close the session? And thank you participants for being part of this session. Deepak, are you going to come to close?
Yeah, Dayanand, thank you so much. And thank you so much. And thanks everybody. It was a wonderful, engaging session. And I must say that, Dayanand, your surprise of one-liner at the last brings a real poetic stuff out of everybody. So that was fantastic. So thank you very much, and be safe, be healthy.